tone, with one voice, we're a nation undivided and poised. We will take us down and build our land in faith to defend what is ours. Here we are as a people with one heart for one cause. We're determined to rebuild and restore.
Good afternoon and happy Democracy Day, Nigerians. My name is Esther Alaribi, and I welcome you to this important conversation, this special Democracy Day broadcast, as we reflect on a significant milestone in our nation's history. 25 years since Nigeria embarked on its journey towards democratic governance. Today we ask this important question: 25 years after, has Nigerians, have we gained from democracy? Has Nigeria gained? May the sacrifices of our heroes past never be in vain. Dear Nigerians, do lend your voice to this important conversation as we have come a long way in our democracy. Marking this day celebration, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu addressed Nigerians, congratulating all of us for witnessing the celebration of another Democracy Day, marking 25 years of uninterrupted democratic governance. Celebrating the heroes who made this possible, reiterating his stance. In his words, I am morally and constitutionally bound to preserve this precious form of governance. I vow to do my utmost best to protect your rights, freedoms, and liberties as citizens of Nigeria. These are the words of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu today, June 12, 2024. Do well to join the conversation by contributing or reacting to the program. Listen live via the website www.wfm917.com. Once again, my name is Esther Alaribi, and you can send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537 to be a part of the conversation right here today as we get to celebrate 25 years of our democracy. And today, we'll be exploring the strides that we've achieved in various sectors: education, healthcare, infrastructure, human rights. We'll also be confronting the pressing issues that remain: corruption, economic disparity, and security concerns. Now, the question: has the promise of democracy been fulfilled for the average Nigerian? The aspiration of the 1999 Constitution, how well has it been translated to us as Nigerians, and what benefit can we say that Nigerians have enjoyed in all of this? And of course, I have a lineup of amazing experts in different fields, and today I'll be speaking to Dr. Cynthia Greg, Managing Director, Safety Signature Limited; Elizabeth George Esquire, Executive Director, Child is Gold Foundation; Dr. Faith Ikpekurede, Group Director, Emergency Medicine and Ambulance Services at Redington Hospital Group; Dr. Suleiman Yaradua, Associate Professor, the Department of Mass Communication at Bayero University; and also Dr. Helen Emore, Managing Director, Scientia Partners Innovation Hub. This amazing lineup of speakers, and you can tell from this lineup that yes, we're going to be having salient conversations as it relates to our democracy. Bringing on board, we'll get to say welcome to our guest, and yes, we get to kick off these conversations. Good afternoon, Dr. Greg. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Hester.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope that you're having an amazing day.
Sure.
All right.
Happy Democracy Day to you all, Nigerians.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good afternoon, Elizabeth George, Executive Director, Child is Good. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Democracy Day. Thank you for having me.
Good
I
afternoon.
believe we're going to have a good and excellent conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm assured of that too. Good afternoon, Dr. Yaradua. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes, good afternoon. And happy Democracy Day.
Thank you. Same to you, and same to all Nigerians listening to us.
Thank you. And yes, also we have Dr. Epe Korede. Good afternoon, Doctor. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Esther. I'm doing really well. And good afternoon, everyone. And to all our listeners, happy Democracy Day.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to a very interesting time of gaining knowledge about where we're at.
Thank you very much.
Discuss.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Helen Emaro. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Democracy Day. Happy to be here. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Yes, it is our democracy. Happy Democracy Day to us as Nigerians. 25 years so far. Has Nigeria actually gained the dividend of democracy? I'll be starting off this conversation with Dr. Greg. I mean, looking back over this past 25 years, how would you assess Nigeria's journey towards stable democracy in terms of everything that we get to see today? Looking at the struggles of our heroes past, how would you say that this has translated to the average Nigerian?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here again, like I said earlier. When we take a reflection into the struggle of 25 years, proud to be democratic dispensation, we cannot tell what dictatorship rule looks like in Nigeria. So I think this ushered the need for the struggle for democracy. And here we are, 25 years down the line. What do we say we can recount after the struggle? What are the pains? What are the gains? So when I take it to the sector where I am, it's security. I'd like to look at the history of what insecurity has become in Nigeria today. You see, when we say we run a democratic system of government, a democratic system of government should reflect itself in all sectors. It is democracy for the people, both all classes of people, the upper echelons and the lower echelons. But today, do we say we have this dividend in all sectors, particularly security? Because it seems like the agitations and radicalism that has bettered insecurity in Nigeria is still kind of having its way, where your movement seemed infringed, as you try to journey a path, either by a banditry group or by any form of, disagreement between a couple of persons, and then your movement is hindered. I think that's just a reflection of what it looks like in our sector today. So I'm happy to join the conversation, and I wish we can really dissect what the problems are, galvanize the solutions, and be able to give a good discourse to this topic, at least for the sake of Nigerians. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Greg, for your submission right there. Okay, I'm moving over to George. George, please tell us, what do you think are the dividends of democracies that Nigerians, in your opinion, are currently enjoying, or would say are the benefits that we've seen so far?
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Well, we are not there yet, but we are making huge progress. There are lots of dividends of democracy that is being enjoyed by Nigerians. At least we have certain freedoms in quotes, because some of the freedoms are not really free. But at least there are certain things that were happening in the dictatorship rule that it's not happening now. And for us in the humanitarian space, we see that there are lots of improvement. There are lots of certain laws that has helped and supported women, children, and even citizens of Nigeria. Yes, there are also lots of things that we need to work or improve upon, which we'll talk about it later. But I would say that democracy, for me, is a win. At least we're making progress. Yes, even though there are lots of things that are still, untouched or have gone really, really bad. But I would say it's still better than the reign where people cannot express themselves freely, where people cannot be voted for, where people cannot, the citizens cannot really choose their own leaders. So for me, I think there's actually dividend for democracy, even for the fact that people can at least select their own leaders, people that will represent them. It's a good thing. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, George. Dr. Yaradua, what would you say 25 years after looking at democracy? What are the strides that you think that we've achieved?
Well, we can say, you see, democracy has stabilized the country, and we have multifaceted things that we can, when we're looking at the situation. We can look at it from different perspectives. Like in the educational sector, where I am, I can say that there was some progress that were made. However, there are a lot of things that need to be done. But in general terms, we can say that, having democratic space in the country has empowered people with rights, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and what have you. And that in itself, when you reflect during the military era, where people are gagged, where we have a lot of dictatorship going on, democracy has given us space and leverage. But then it came with its own baggages. See, the baggages are both good and bad. And those that we can say that are good are those that allow people to determine who govern them and to search for good governance, because you can say no when you're being badly governed. But as a whole, we can say that democracy has brought a lot of progress in the country and has empowered a lot of people in terms of human development. But then a lot needs to be done, because Nigeria's population, going by what we are having, currently we're running into about 230 million and ranking 6th in the world. But then the tragedy is the Human Development Index. We are ranked very low even in the African continent. Like looking at the categories, well, 3 categories, for example, in Africa. Nigeria, being the largest democracy in Africa, should have been in the category of the likes of South Africa in terms of Human Development Index. But then, sadly, it is in the low Human Development Index, where Nigeria ranked 24 in Africa, for example, out of about 54 African countries. And that is not a good omen for the development of this country. And ranking 157 in the world in terms of educational development, behind Ghana, Botswana, Cameroon, Kenya. Even the smaller African countries are far ahead of Nigeria in terms of educational development, in terms of Human Development Index. And I think we have to do a lot to be able to catch up with even the African countries, because about 24 African countries are far ahead of Nigeria. And being the largest African country in terms of population, even in terms of development-wise, we should be far ahead of other countries. And, democracy is giving us the leverage to be able to come up with a lot of policies and programs that can make us better. But then we are really I can say, we're lagging behind. To be honest with you, we're lagging behind. We need to do a lot to be able to catch up with some of our sister African nations that are far, far ahead of us in terms of the development index, in terms of educational development, in terms of economic development, and many other sectors. So I think on the whole, we are not doing badly, but then a lot needs to be done.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Yaradua. Now, moving over to Dr. Ekpekorede. How would you say that this has played out in the health sector?
Thank you very much. It's been quite enlightening listening to the other speakers. And with regards to the health sector, I want to look at it looking at two sectors within the healthcare sector. I'm looking at the private sector and then the public sector. Now, when it comes to the public sector, we made some progress, but when you compare progress in terms of infrastructure and healthcare indices to the global benchmark, we are painfully far behind, and I'll be talking about that much later. But the private sector gives us a lot of hope with regards to the healthcare landscape in Nigeria. Like I think Dr. Yaradua mentioned, our population is actually the largest in Africa. And when you think of that and think of what our healthcare infrastructure and our healthcare indices are, you know that we have a lot of work to do. But the public sector, which is the way of hope in the horizon of the Nigerian healthcare sector, is actually doing so much at the moment. And I want to say that the reason the private healthcare sector is expanding and doing so much more at the moment is because democracy, to some degree, has been able to create some degree of an enabling environment for persons, organizations, Nigerians from the diaspora to come back home or come to Nigeria and set up healthcare institutions. In the last 5 years, there's been quite a lot of that development in the healthcare sector going on, with massive new healthcare establishments springing up in places like Lagos, Abuja, Kano, just across the entire Nigerian landscape. That is a huge plus for our democracy, because these private healthcare organizations are bringing modern technology, modern infrastructure, and to a great degree, they're altering the healthcare indices in the country. Unfortunately, and I want to say here, unless something is done about our current inflation, the free fall of the naira, these wonderful investments might be jeopardized. But nonetheless, they are actually a big ray of hope in the Nigerian healthcare landscape. And if you look at the Abuja Declaration in 2021 of the African Union, the goal was to have at least 15% of budgetary allocation to healthcare. At the moment, I want to commend the government. We've gone from 3% to about 4.8%, but we're still far from that goal of 15% budgetary allocation. So yes, there have been some improvements, like I said, in the private sector especially, and there's been an improvement in terms of budgetary allocation to healthcare, but we still have a long way to go. when we begin to look at data on the healthcare indices in our country. Thank you very much. I want to stop there at this point.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for your comments on there. Really, when we look at the investments that have been made and the progress achieved in the private health sector, oh yes, this is actually very good. But again, the question is, with all that you've narrated here, looking at how the economy has been dealing with inflation, how long are we going to be able to sustain all of this new innovation and modern technology equipment they've been run, sustaining this private sector and also for public? Also, there are people who cannot afford to go use these private facilities. I mean, we would always have fingers are not equal, like we would normally say in the local parlance, but not a lot of people will be able to achieve or go for the premium services that you can get in the private sector. And even in the public sector, there has to be some level of intentionality to ensure that everyone has access to this easy facilities, equipment. People don't have to travel or pay out of so much pain before they can access health care easily. And these are the conversations that we're having. Dr. Emory, tell us, how do you think we're doing 25 years after? Talk about the economy, talk about innovation, technology. Where do you see us at, looking at how far we've come?
Yeah, I mean, as I was preparing for this program, I decided to check some indices. We saw that in Nigeria, as at 1999, our GDP was 59 billion. And as at 2014, when we rebased, we were 500 and something billion, even though it has come down now to about 270 something billion dollars in terms of GDP value. I will still say that we are doing very well. And the reason why I say we are doing very well is that in 1999, there were no GSM. I remember where I was working there, we bought phones, multi-links and intercellular. Was costing almost 200 and something thousand naira to buy that analog phone that could not even give you internet, right? But fast forward to 2001 when President Obasanjo came, and he sold GSM licenses, and it is on record that Nigeria experienced its highest GDP growth in 2002 when there was a rollout of the telecom services. And what does that mean for us? That means that we now have more opportunities as a people. I'm not disputing the fact that it has become, our cost of living has gone over the roof. In 1993, I could cook a pot of stew for 20 naira. I remember clearly because I was in between jobs then. My pot of soup was 20 naira and my pot of stew was like another 25, 30 naira. But that will sound very strange to people now when you tell people how it was then. But here's the catch. We have more opportunity now than we had in 1999. Now people can start their businesses on social media. You don't need...
Well, I think Dr. Emory is having network challenges. We'll try to reconnect with her in a bit as we get to go on this very important conversation today, Democracy Day, as we get to look at 25 years after. Has Nigeria gained? These are the conversations that we're having, and you also can lend in your voice by joining in the conversation. Send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537 to be a part of the conversation right here on Women Radio 91.7. My name is Esther Alaribi, and yes, we're looking at this very important conversation today with my lineup of guests, and we're having to ask this question. Has Nigeria actually gained from democracy? Listening to the president's speech this morning, and we're just having to note that there's so much that... Yes, Dr. Mara, are you there? Okay.
Have not worked before. And that's what I think we should be engaging the government to change. Policies that are dragging us down instead of lifting us up. But generally, I would say that Nigeria is better now than it was in 1999. I would rather live in 2024 Nigeria than live in 1999 Nigeria.
That's a very strong one there to put out, Dr. Emoره. You'd rather live a Nigeria of 2024 than the Nigeria of 1999.
Yes.
So, noting this, are you just looking at only the economy or like overall progress?
So again, I have a perspective that says that if you look at everything generally, right, we have made significant progress, even socially. We have made significant progress. However, like one of the speakers said earlier on, in terms of the Human Development Index, we haven't grown as we ought to. And that, again, for me, is a function of government policies that have not taken into consideration the need for us to have growth with development. So we have very good economic growth, but we need to increase development. Our population in 1999 was not 200 million. Then it was estimated to be around 150 or so. But now, we've added more than 50 million people, and we haven't added enough infrastructure. We haven't done enough in education. Every time I see children who are not in school, my heart bleeds, because it means we are creating a pool of miscreants. And we are seeing the results. The Almajiris that were around in the 80s and 90s are the ones that have come to terrorize us now. So we need to make this development inclusive. We need to make the growth inclusive. The growth needs to include human development. We need to develop people. We need to take care of our social system, hospitals, schools. I went to school with free books in secondary school, from Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. I had free notebooks, free textbooks. It doesn't happen anymore. We used to be able to go to hospitals and have treatment. It doesn't happen anymore. You know, it's very limited. So in terms of, I'm looking at two sides. In terms of economic opportunities, we have more now.
Okay.
However, in terms of social development, the government needs to do more so that the growth can include development. That's it. But if you ask me where do I want to be, I would still prefer to be in 2024 Nigeria, in 1999 Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Helen Emoره. You have actually put out all of this point and explained it this way. I think I see where you're coming from. Dr. Yaradua, I'm taking this to you now. Dr. Helen Emoره was trying to explain that back in her time, you could go to school free education from Form 1 up until the time you were done. And yes, this was something that was well catered for. But these days, we don't get to see that anymore. We have rising numbers of out-of-school children, and with the current inflation, the economy, a lot of parents might be forced to take their children out of school. And this is further going to increase the numbers that we have. Sometimes when I get to hear people talk about the numbers of out-of-school children, there's data conflict, because somebody's telling you, oh no, it's not 10 million again, it's now this. This just gets to show you how much we don't have data, how much we have children roaming the street, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is indeed a challenge. I'm also a beneficiary of free education in the country, because I went to school. My dad never knew what tuition fees is, and primary school through university. So I think the children, the present children, global children in the country should also enjoy what you enjoy, because I believe Nigeria has sufficient resources to cater for every citizen of this country as far as education is concerned. Because you see, the amount of the quantum of resources that's being injected into education, even though it's not up to the UNESCO minimum, which is 26%, the government needs to do more, because we have to shift towards gradual increment of budgetary allocation to education that will take care of all these problems that are associated with education, especially starting with the basic education, which is the foundation education. You see, if you don't get the foundation education right, there's no way you can get your educational sector right, because the foundation is the building block of the future of education in the country. And so if you leave the basic education with less resources, or you don't give attention to basic education, certainly the tertiary education will also suffer. Because your input, what you graduate from the basic schools, will now move to universities, and so what you see is the skills you're going to generate are going to be not the standard skills that we expect from graduates of public schools. You see, the private sector has come in to intervene by providing some services, but you see, the problem with private sector participation in education is that only those that have the wherewithal can take their children to school. So we're talking about education that will serve, functional education. Let me add this, functional education that will serve to propel the progress and development of this country. And it has to be an inclusive education. Whether you are rich or you're poor, you should have access to education. Because, so the amount of resources that should be injected, I think the government needs to do more to move from the paltry sum of 7.9% to minimum, the UNESCO minimum. Even if the government cannot reach up to the 26% UNESCO minimum, I believe the government have the resources to move towards 15 to 20% of budgetary allocation to education. And that resources is sufficient. Let me add this, is sufficient to take care of every child that is in school. Primary school, secondary school, universities, polytechnics, and other tertiary education, and can take care of all these children. So I believe the government needs to do more in terms of budgetary allocation to education, because looking at the statistics from 1999 to date, I have not seen any year from 1999 to 2024 where there is any significant increase of budgetary allocation to education up to a minimum of 15%. That is not. No year from 1999 to date. So the government needs to do more, increase budgetary allocation, and not only increase budgetary allocation, but also the resources should be channeled toward the proper channel and should be monitored, because a lot of leakages is hampering the growth and development of education. And the leakages that we're experiencing, even with the paltry sum that we see that is going on, is allocated to education, like let's say, for example, the 2024 budget, for example, about maybe 7.9% is allocated, which if you take 7.9% of the total budgetary allocation, is about 2.1 trillion. And 2.1 trillion, if judiciously utilized in the educational sector, will transform the educational landscape, and which every citizen will have functional education. So I think something needs to be done in terms of utilization of the resources which the government provide, both at federal level, state level, and local government level. So all tiers of government must put eye on resources that are allocated to education if we want a functional education, because education provides the fulcrum of development, because it's a service center that provides all the labor you need. We produce the engineers, we produce the doctors, we produce the scientists, we produce everyone, we produce them in the educational sector. So now, how can you develop without having the requisite skill that you need for you to develop? Now we are transiting from to a knowledge-based society, and you are education and service. So you see, when you are transiting to knowledge-based societies inject heavily into the educational sector. Look at China, for example. Look at the Middle East, for example. Look at all the advanced countries, for example. Their contribution or their percentage of budgetary allocation to education is high, because they know that education is the fulcrum or is the lifeline of any development. So China has developed within a very short period of time. And look at the resources that China is investing in education. So the government needs to do more to invest in education, and not only to invest in education, but also to put an eye in the education, in the utilization of the fund itself. So I think something needs to be done if we really want to have development in the country and want to, all the sectors that are having problems are directly linked to the problems in the educational sector. So if you want to get it right, you must try to revamp your educational sector from the basic education to tertiary education.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Yaradua, for all of this. Really, education is the bane of a lot of things that we get to see happen in our society, and we need to actually increase budgetary allocation that goes into that particular sector, and that's what Dr. Yaradua is having to reiterate this afternoon. 19 minutes to 1 on Your Women Radio, WFM 91.7, and yes, it is Democracy Day, and we're having this very important conversation, asking 25 years after democracy has Nigeria gained. My name is Esther Alaribi, and my guest today, I'm speaking to Dr. Cynthia Greg, Managing Director at Safety Signature Limited, Elizabeth George Esquire, Executive Director, Children's Gold Foundation, Dr. Faith Ipekurede, Group Director, Emergency Medicine and Ambulance Services at Redington Hospital Group, Dr. Suleiman Yaradua, Associate Professor of the Department of Mass Communication at Bayero University, Dr. Helen Emore, Managing Director, Scientia Partners Innovation Hub. And yes, we're asking, are Nigerians truly enjoying the benefit of democracy? You can send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537. You can listen live via the website on www.wfm917.com. Download the mobile app to listen live, WFM 917. Now I'm coming back to you, Dr. Greg, having to talk about security and the different issues that we've had to experience in recent times, and what exactly we need to do. So asking you now, what are the most pressing security challenges that we really need to address? Because we have the issue of banditry, terrorism, communal clashes here and there. I still saw a particular one for one community in a state where they're having to clash with the other communities, and this is something that, but even as media practitioners, we're also tired of having to report negative news of people losing their lives, or people having to vacate their farmlands or move away from their ancestral homes. But these are the issues that actually persist.
All right, thank you. I'm very delighted with making significant progress in this discourse, and I've truly enjoyed the contributions of all other of your guests this afternoon. But before I take your question, I would like to truly and sincerely admit that as a Nigerian, I can attest to the transition growth. I can attest to the transformation growth, particularly of the private sector. You see, the Nigeria I see today is a Nigeria that is pioneered by the private sector. All of the benefits we have listed are benefits that I can see are more, are truly defined by many in the private sector. If you ask me, I'll be wondering, where really can I place the role of government? Beyond the fact that we've been given, those in the private sector has been given the convivial environment, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of communication, relating with people, occupying your space to thrive. So it's a free for all. You can speak, you can write, you can be on social media, you can run your business, you can secure license to operate the private sector, whatever sector you have, or an approval, depending on what you need to run in the private sector. But when you go to the manufacturing sector, you go to the education sector, like has been listed, who are those that are actually thriving? Who are those running the education sector today? What can you define as the impact of government here in relation to the growth of democracy? While it is applaudable that, yes, we all have a space to explore, to speak, to run our businesses. We have GSMs today. We all can communicate. Technology is, the in thing. And yes, we have gadgets. But can you consider the cost of living with all of these provisions that the system has made available to all? The cost of living, all of this we have listed are hinged on a cost. You live in a house, you consider all level of security arrangement. You think of installation of CCTV cameras. You think of deployment of security guards to your house or your company. You cannot confidently stay anywhere today without having to either think of community relationship with people, those in your community, to guarantee your security, or you have to hire the private security sector to assist in offering that security service. You ask yourself, where is government in this? You go to the manufacturing sector, you go to the education sector, all of them. You ask yourself, what role does government play in this sector? That is what we are talking about. It has made, the cost of survival, toughened. And this is why we have people losing interest in education. When you go to the north, a lot of them till date are still being coerced into going to study, even with free available education. Because they ask themselves, after schooling, what do I have in return? Do I have gainful employment? Now I am taking your question, responding to your question. Now, do I have gainful employment after being coerced to study? From the north. So what kind of opportunities do I have when I've gone to school? For the Amajeris who do not have opportunities to go to school, there are opportunities right now. With the opportunities, what is the future for these people? Why do we have the Japa syndrome today? Many of those running out of Nigeria are not the less skilled individuals. They are not the uneducated Nigerians. You go to the medical line, the medical sector, you have many of our doctors 14 out of the country. So it is not like they lack education. It's not like they couldn't afford it at the time, they needed it. But we are looking at what opportunities do we have after all of this. And this is what has birthed insecurity. That those who are left are now thinking, what can I gain? How do I get my gains? It is by agitation. What brought about Eastern Security Network? It's about agitation. What was Sunday Igboho fighting for? About agitation. Agitating for something that has to do with federal government. Agitating for something that has to do with the state government, or agitating for something that borders on the local government. So you see that many just have to find a space to speak because you have to be heard. So looking at your question, really, so many insecurity to talk about. The most threatening one is kidnapping. Several pockets of groups of persons have come together to realize that terrorism is another business space that deliberately or non-deliberately government has given out. Consciously or unconsciously, the opportunity has been given. So if you can't make, you mar. So you form pockets of banditry groups, terrorizing people from place to place, kidnapping people to be able to get a ransom. And this is the state we have today. That when you and I want to travel on the road, you have to arrange for safety signatures when you alight from your flight to convey you, with escorts to your destination point. So while these are business opportunities for all of us, we need to consider the cost of running, the cost of living, the cost of survival. What about those who cannot afford it? What are you teaching them? You are pushing them into unemployment or lack of gainful employment. You are pushing them into joining various groups to, oppress people, terminate people's freedom, and we are back to square one, insecurity. So this is where we are, and I think it's highly important that government needs to take a closer look at the security of Nigerians in Nigeria today. I've had a couple of friends who were made in Nigeria, but have decided to port out of the country to go and live abroad because of insecurity. So Nigeria is a space, is a land to survive if you really can work, if you can define your planning processes, your growth processes. There are indices for growth. But after you've even survived it, can you live? Can you remain here? Today, you hear it on air. How many pastors, who are running churches with good population have decided to leave Nigeria and live outside the shores of the country, So the opportunities, business opportunities are there. There's no doubt about that. But can we say we are safe today? You and I can tell.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Greg, really highlighting these issues. And we're still coming back to solutions, recommendations, what should be done, because it's not just enough that we get to talk about these problems. As we get to see them every day, we get to read about them in the report. Different broadcast platforms also get to carry this news across to us. But exactly how are we ensuring that we provide solutions to these issues? Now, I'm coming to you, George. This one, having to beam the light on women and girls, prioritizing the well-being of women and girls in different areas. There's still a whole lot that we need to talk about. If we're looking at our democracy and looking at the numbers of women in politics, adequate representation, we know that the conversation is still very, very far off. We do know that. I mean, I was listening to the president's speech this morning and looking at the word transcription, also having to highlight people who were given credit, our heroes past, for their contributions to democracy. I mean, you can count the numbers of women that were mentioned there. I mean, I for one only saw the name of Kudirat Abiola. I don't know if you were able to pick up on anyone else, but this still goes to show you that the contributions of women and girls in Nigeria really need to be given more focus and more attention. And also, what can we do to make their lives better? George.
All right, thank you so much. Like you said, listening to the speech was really, well, I say, disheartening, because there are lots of women and girls doing great things. However, they are never allowed to get to the hem of affairs. And some people will argue, did anybody stop them from contesting elections? Why would we say they are not allowed? Well, except if we work on our cultural, social, economic thinking. This woman will just have this potentials and they will not be seen. I know of someone that I was discussing with, a very learned person, during the election of Adamawa State Yola, and he was telling me that the female that is contesting, it's a good person and he knows her well. I think she served as a senator. But he said, however, they would not allow, no matter what it takes. Now, it's a personal discussion. I'm just trying to tell you how the thoughts of people. Now, I'm not talking of an illiterate, someone, that is not educated. I'm talking of a learned person thinking like this. He said, however, no matter how hard she tried, they would ensure that she doesn't get to be number one citizen of the state. And he said, he went further and said, it's okay for a woman to be the deputy. But for her to lead a state or a country, not in Nigeria. So you see, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. Like I said earlier, we're not where we are, but we're not close to where we should be. If you look at the women affirmative action, okay, we say we are going to give women certain percentage. Is it really, really, really what is happening? In reality, look at the number of women. And then for the few women that are even in government, every little thing you see, agitation of, sack her, she have to leave. I'm making instance with the present Minister of Women Affairs, the issue that happened in Niger State, the marriage of the 100 girls. Yeah. 100 orphan girls. Yeah, I watched the live video of, a group of people after their meeting, and all they came out, sack her, she's incompetent, why would she say this kind of things and all of that. So because I just feel, because she's even a woman, There are also men that make mistakes. There are also men, that is, if, I'm not even saying she made a mistake, or I'm even saying if she actually made a mistake. There are other ways of doing this thing. But because she's a woman, oh no, she took money, oh, she did this, oh, sack her. So even the few women that are in the helm of affairs, in fact, it starts from the elementary level. You even at least, let's even start from the elementary level. How many headmistresses do we have? How many headmasters do we have? Okay, let's go to school. How many female deans do we have? Okay, let's go to the hospital. How many? Let's go to the, just in every sector. And they believe that, okay, in fact, there are certain organizations that have specific positions for women. Okay, the women can only be the treasurer or the vice president. But see, the key position in an organization, the head, that's the chairperson and the secretary. No. It has to be the men. Okay, the woman can do welfare. And it limits women. And then the women are not really enjoying this democratic, opportunities that they should enjoy, because they are still considered as, it's just like dictatorship, since they don't have freedom of leadership. The Constitution did not separate, right to education, right to life, right, freedom of religion. It did not indicate, male or female. It is to every Nigerian citizen. And the highest office in this country is first to be a citizen. And everybody should be treated equally. Of course, that's not what is happening in reality. Women are marginalized. You see, there's no conducive space for the women to actually come out and bring out their. Imagine the kind of seasoned women that are on this talk show. When I saw the flyer yesterday, I was like, wow, imagine the rich. These are women that have great and powerful potential. I don't think there's any position you would give any woman on this platform in this country that should not be able to do well. But the moment she brings out her, her head, just start by buying forms, you will not see attack from everywhere. And somebody will tell you the only reason is because she's a woman. Like I told you, I was speaking with somebody. He told me how good the woman is, how, and she's going to change the state. So when he was saying the good thing, I was like, wow, that's good. But he said, because she's a woman. So the impact, is really heartbreaking. So I think there's a lot to be done, starting with the government. If you say you want to give certain percentage to women, you give them. Look at other countries that allow women in the helm of affairs, or even young girls. You will see how far they've gone. And because there are no women in the helm of affairs, laws that has to do with women, it's not easy. You don't expect men to pass laws that will protect women when they don't understand the situation. In Bauchi State, where I am presently, in our House of Assembly, we don't have a single woman, not even one. We're just privileged that we have a speaker that understands the issue of women. But he cannot understand it like you, a woman.
Of course.
And that is why we at least lobby, we go through him and, seek for certain favor, like Child Right Act, the Violence Against Person Prohibition Act, that's the VAP law, and he passed the VAP law into law. But imagine if we had women that understand these issues that affect them directly. It would be easier. And then you say a whole House of Assembly, the lawmakers, the highest decision-making body in the state. We don't have one woman. I'm not saying we have two. I'm not saying we have one. We don't even have one that is marginalized. We don't have a woman at all. And this is democracy at 25. So some things that even go on, you tend to wonder if this is actually the way we want to, or we are actually going backwards, or we are actually moving forward. It is disheartening, but I still see hope. There's a ray of hope somewhere, somehow. With time, I know that it's going to get better. But I feel that women are not really given, the leverage, the playing ground to bring out their potential. And if we don't allow them to bring out, they will not be felt. All the knowledge, all the ideas they have will not be seen. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Judge. And really having to highlight that there is no female at the Bauchi State House of Assembly. This is really, really worrisome. I was looking at a particular detail from Invictus Africa that they had to put together on numbers of state assemblies that had women and the ones that didn't. And really, this just gets to show you what we're having to discuss after so long and how a lot of women are still marginalized. And when you look at women in the political space, really, these conversations are not any different, because some states, just like we've highlighted, do not necessarily have female representatives. And even when we get to see women try to contest for elections or picking up the form, these are the issues that we still get to see. And the marginalization is there. I'm looking at some states, and you just cannot understand why we're having to marginalize against women so much. But again, it still goes to show you that we're not carrying everyone along. Everyone is not being carried along to be able to harness their potential to contribute positively to the country. Now I'm moving to Dr. Faith Ikpekorede. That's the Group Director of Emergency Medicine and Ambulance Services at Redington Hospital Group. I know that you've spoken about the private sector. Now, having to look at the public sector and what is easily accessible to the masses, yes, because not everybody can afford what we have going on in the private sector. And yes, you would agree with me that for even the private sector, the amount of funding and investment that goes into bringing on board this modern equipment and running these businesses. Yes, I choose to call them businesses because away from the fact that you're in the business of saving lives and ensuring people's health, it is still a business. And for anyone who is investing their money in any kind of business, they also want dividends of that investment. But talking about public, that is easily accessible to the masses, we're not seeing a lot of investments being done there. Or it doesn't cascade down to the poor people who actually need it. I would take, for instance, there is a primary healthcare center somewhere in Ibafo here in Ogun State. And for the very first time, I think I went there sometime last year or early this year, I'm not sure now. I got there and I was trying to understand how this place that I'm seeing is a healthcare center. I mean, if someone had told me, maybe someone had just asked me, oh, what do you think this place is? I probably would say it's a pottery. Yeah, I said that. I probably would have thought it was a pottery, but alas, it was a healthcare center. And I'm supposed to come here and confidently see a doctor, see a nurse, and I'm going to have some kind of confidence in the fact that they're going to be able to treat me well. These are the issues that poor Nigerians are faced with, Dr. Ikpekorede.
Thank you very much, Esther, for that analysis. Very apt. I just want to quickly, before I get right into your question, I want to just quickly take a look at some of the indices. Sometime in life generally, you have the principle of the half full cup and the half empty cup. I just want to quickly say here that I like the analysis of Dr. Murray about wanting to that the 2024 Nigeria is far better opportunities than 1999. Now, I take that into the healthcare space, and I want to look at certain indices. Life expectancy, for instance, as of 2023 in Nigeria is 56 years. In 1999, it was about 46. Now, I know that with the 56 years, even though it's an improvement on what it was before, we still rank about 200 in the world. But, like I said, yes, the cup is half empty, but it's also half full. So we can look at it from the half full end. Now, we've made some progress from 1999 to now. We've gone from 46 years to 56 years. Let's look at maternal mortality. Now, the world average, I just want to add there, is about 74. Let's look at maternal mortality rate in Nigeria. At the moment, we have about 1,024 per 100,000 live births. Now, that is an improvement from what it was in 1994. Now, we're still not where we want to be because we have countries like the US doing 22 per 100,000 live births. And then a country like Norway probably almost recording 0 per 100,000 live births. but the fact remains that we've made some progress. I look at infant mortality rate. At the moment, we're doing about 74 for 1,000 live births, compared to the global average, 37 for 1,000 live births. And when you compare to where we were before, we've actually moved forward. Now, I wanted to put that, looking at those indices.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how you're looking at it. It could be quite dismal when you compare it to the world average, the global average. But when you compare it to where we're coming from.
Okay, we'll try to reconnect with Dr. Ikpe-Korede in a bit as we get to go on this conversation this afternoon. Yes, I think you're back on. Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Could I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. Why the public sector is not as effective as it should be in the Nigerian healthcare space. And I want to say this, that this is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's actually a global phenomenon. The public organizations oftentimes don't do as well as private organizations for several reasons, a few of which I'll talk about. One is a sense of ownership. In the public sector, oftentimes don't have that sense of ownership because government and nobody get up. But in the private sector, we all know that is different. In the public sector, you have a lack, oftentimes very little or a total lack of accountability. That is not the case in the private sector. In the public sector, you often find out that there are no defined and well-organized systems. And even though we say there are policies and procedures, they're not adhered to, they're not followed like you will have in the private sector. Now, having brought up some of these few factors that can actually influence why we're not able to get as much results, and the outcomes in the public sector are very different from the outcomes in the private sector. What is the solution? Is one thing to see the problem, is another thing to see what the solution should be. Now, we always have a tendency to look at the Western world and say, oh, things are working, things are different, and all of that. But I just want to bring into fore the fact that at the moment, there are certain healthcare systems outside the country which are popular, which currently are not doing so well. We need to learn from studying those systems to know that, to see how we can better make our system work. I look at systems like the NHS, for instance, that is actually at the moment that we speak, is literally almost filling the populace in the United Kingdom. Even though we'd say compared to the Nigerian system, it's much better. But having worked there and also seeing what it is, I think it's better for us to focus on the way forward. So what's the way forward? To ensure that, yes, not the poor masses might not be able to afford the care that the private sector provides. But there's a window of opportunity there, because the private sector is doing so well because they harnessed all of those factors I mentioned earlier on and more. How can we harness what the private sector has and translate it into the private sector? It can happen by what we all call public-private partnerships. Now, with public-private partnerships, we can actually be able to transfer the accountability, the sense of ownership, and all of those things that make the private sector a thriving business with relatively good outcomes, transfer a bit of it to the government sector. And I want to look at governments, the Lagos State government at the moment. because they are working on such partnerships already. And I believe that with time, that will come to the fore. But I want to look at another government like the Edo State government, for instance. I'm an emergency medicine physician, so that is in my space. The Edo State government, for instance, is working closely with a private organization in their emergency medicine healthcare provision in terms of ambulance provision. And they have what we call the Edo EMS. The Edo EMS is a public-private partnership. And what it has done is to actually provide ambulances such that it's not just managed by the government, but there are private stakeholders and community stakeholders. And what that means is that in the event of an emergency, there is a vehicle to transport the patient from the scene of the incident to the hospital where they can get care. That's just one example of a public-private partnership. And a lot of these public-private partnerships are actually in the pipeline. They're currently being worked on, because whether we see it or not, Nigeria has made some progress. Not as much as we want. And when you put it in the face of some of the daunting challenges we have, like the security issues and the inflation and all of that, it looks as if we haven't. But we have to own it that we have made some progress. And this public-private partnership that is gradually crystallizing in most of the states of the country in the healthcare sector is one of such. In countries like India, who have a similar sort of demographic with us in terms of context, we find out that some of these public-private partnerships are already happening. And it's actually becoming a health tourism destination for most countries in Africa. Now, I'll leave that and move on to something else, which is also very pertinent in the healthcare space. Now, we always see the Japa syndrome, and we always see it in the negative light. But I think we need to also see it in a positive light in the healthcare space. Yes, it's a challenge because some of our best brains are going out. But when you think of the fact that when you look at it put it in context, look at countries like India, Singapore, Malaysia, even China, you find out that they all, at certain points in their history, experience those sort of brain drains and exodus, a mass exodus of brains and talents. But years down the line, there is something that has happened in those clients, and that is the reverse drain or gain of those brains, to the fact that you have hospitals like hospitals and the big ones in India that we go to they are people who have come back into the country to set up things. Now bring it into a Nigerian context. At the moment, there is quite some significant brain gain going on in our healthcare space. And because all we seem to see, and the impact of that is so much, because it's actually the more of the younger generation going out. And I've come to the point where I don't see that as a problem anymore. And I feel that if we learn to harness it, the opportunity in it, we will stop seeing it as a problem. Now, I've been out of the country for I've worked for a total of over 10 years in the NHS and Ireland, and I'm back to Nigeria. That's a brain gain. In the group where I work, you find out most of the consultants have worked outside the country and they are back home. And somebody like GMD, for instance, is one of the world specialists in endoscopy. And he is comfortable being back here and he has no intentions of going back. Now, those are some of the gains in terms of what's going on. So I'm putting all of those in perspective to help us see that is not all gloom and dark, and even think that all of these people are just in the private sector. Some of these brain gained are in the public sector as well. But like I said, we have to begin to focus more on public-private partnerships in our healthcare. I think that's the way forward. And at the moment, it's already beginning to happen. And I see that there are organizations at the moment that are actually bringing together the public and the private sector. One of them is the Healthcare Federation of Nigeria. The president is Dr. Pamela Ajayi. And then she has the women's arm of it. And the goal is actually to see how we can all collaborate to harness the resources in terms of manpower and infrastructure, as lean as it is, and be able to gradually, in little pockets, change the outcome in our healthcare indices, both in the private and in the public healthcare space. So I just hope with that I've been able to create some hope and shed some light on where we are at and where we intend to go.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Reedy, because the way you've analyzed all of this actually gives some ray of hope, really. I mean, the Jakpatengi is not so bad as we get to speak about it in negative light. So what I hear Dr. Ipekorede having to highlight here is, yes, we have people who have traveled abroad, but yes, we also have people who are coming back to invest all of the knowledge and the things that they've learned, what they have seen in other, in quote, saner climes, come to replicate the same thing here back in the country. And also, I think it's also, this government also has a part to play in ensuring that this people who have the interest of the nation at heart to come back to want to invest and implement this new innovation and different ideas also are given a very, very conducive environment to be able to make this happen. Now, this brings me to this question for Dr. Emory, having to note, again, I found it very interesting, her comment where she noted that Nigeria, she'd rather live in Nigeria of 2024 than live in Nigeria of 1999. And I'm also very glad that she's had to expand on that one. So you see where she's coming from in making this assertion. Now, my point to you now, the question, Dr. Emory, would be, looking at the current inflation rate that we have, poverty, hunger in the land, dealing with so many vices at the same time, what would be your recommendation to the government policymakers in ensuring that we're able to make life easy and bearable for the common man and woman?
You know, for me, Nigeria's case is not isolated. And thank you very much, Dr. Faith, for sharing extensively about your experience in the NHS and how there's some sort of reverse migration in that space. So that lets you know that, for me, one of the things that I'd like to say to Nigerians is that we need to really study the history of the evolution of economies. Every strong economy that we admire today has gone through one form of transformation, very painful one or the other. And most recently, what I can compare us with is the United Kingdom. 2 years, a year ago, they had hyperinflation. But now they've been able to cut down their inflation to about 2% compared to 8%, 9% where it was about 2 years ago. What does that mean? It means that when governments see that there's a problem with their economy, they can actually sit down and work to correct the anomalies so that the inflation can come down. For me, what we need is to get governments to actually tame inflation. The high cost of living is killing me. I'm suffering from energy poverty. Everything is just so expensive. No matter how well off you think you are in society, we are all struggling with hyperinflation. But does that mean the whole of Nigeria is bad? My answer is no. And that's why I'm saying we have to look at these issues in context. We cannot disqualify Nigeria and the progress it has made because we've had hyperinflation in the past 8 months or so. What we need to do is to engage the government and say, government, change these policies, change some policies so that we can have a better economy. The reason why we all are quick to condemn Nigeria is because we see the option of going somewhere. We want to japa to Canada, japa to wherever, UK, everybody's going. So the option is, let me go. Nigeria is not finished. There are countries in the history of mankind that have had worse economic situations than Nigeria. The people rose up and compelled the government to fix it. That, for me, I believe is what we need to ask the government to do. The government needs to fix it. We can't continue like this. It's not sustainable. That's what we're going to ask the government to do. But that does not translate to say, oh, nothing can work in Nigeria. No, things can work in Nigeria. We want prices of food to go down. Why are prices of food going down? It's not just economic policies. There's a lot of insecurity. People can't go to farms. I run a food processing business. We have to stop doing groundnut oil because there were a lot of disturbances in the farms in Niger State. And my partner and I lost some money. In fact, he got so frustrated, he left for Canada. Now we have an oil palm farm where we are now milling palm oil. But then that one has its own downside too, because it's not every time they can go into the plantation. Today there's trouble. Tomorrow they say the road is red. When the road is red, it means that they say there are kidnappers around. So if the government addresses the issue of insecurity in the farms, that means we are likely to experience the lower food inflation that we are currently experiencing now. People can go back to their farms. If government fixes infrastructure, the cost of transporting goods from farms to the cities will go down. Those are the things we should be asking government to do. I do not subscribe to saying Nigeria is finished. My argument is that I prefer my Nigeria of 2024. My Nigeria of 2024 is significantly advanced. However, the government needs to address the key issues of insecurity, like someone mentioned earlier on. Allow farmers go back. I have a farm somewhere in Lagos here. I can't go there because every day you hear of kidnapping, and I'm like, well, make the land just stay there. How much is the land anyway? How much will you pay for ransom? So when you look at the opportunity cost of ransom and the land, you leave the land. So those are the issues that are holding us back. Let's address the insecurity. Let's address infrastructure challenges. Let's ensure that we have good education. Let's change our curriculum. As far as I'm concerned, most of the curriculum is outdated. It's not suited to the future of work. So that when people go out of school, they are prepared for the marketplace. A lot of graduates are not prepared for the marketplace. What's happening to our vocational education? Let's fix our vocational education. We have carpenters that if you need them, you have to wait for sometimes for 3 months because they are too busy. Same thing with plumbers, same thing with electricians. So we need a 360 degrees approach to look at Nigeria's problem. But to say Nigeria is finished, I totally disagree with that word. I believe that the government has its own role and the people have its own role. There are economic crises that are solely dependent on government. There are some that require the private sector to take the lead. There are some that require the collaboration of both the government and the private sector. The crisis that we have in Nigeria today requires the government to be pushing, and it requires us also to be pushing, because if we don't push and government takes the right policies, other people will come and take up all the spaces. They will take position, and then we'll now start complaining of marginalization because we are waiting for everything to be all right. So for me, I think we have to look at both sides of the coin. We have to push both. There is not an either or, it's this and that. It's us and government that have to fix this country now. As we are crying that fix it or fix it, we are still going to the farm. We are still going to milk farm. I'm still selling, right? As we are crying, we are still working. I'm still a consultant. I'm still teaching. I'm thinking, okay, there's new technology. What can I do with it? I'm running a program now for over 40s to say, look, we all have to reinvent ourselves. All these opportunities, let's bring our wisdom and experience to use the technology to create new opportunities. So, and for me, I just feel that Nigeria is crying for us to do more. Okay. As we are putting pressure on the government to do more. Our economy is saying, guys, wake up, wake up. You need to do more. It's not motivational speaking. I'm saying what I tell myself and what I tell my friends. And you see people who are doing well because they are just not waiting for everything to be right. They are moving. So this inflation will come down. We have to keep impressing on government to change some policies, bring the inflation down, get all the things that they need to do right, security, fight corruption. Let's just have a system that works where I don't need to know anybody to get things done. Improve the ease of doing business. If you want to open a bank account in Nigeria, do you know how many documents you have to bring? Do you know how many agencies you have to go to? You have to do SCUMU, you have to do this, you have to do so many things. Compared to other climates where opening a bank account is a breeze. So there are a lot of things we need to do to make this country work. But we have to keep impressing it on government. It's a joint effort. The government can't do everything.
Of course. Thank you very much, Dr. Emory. Really, it is a joint effort. I mean, I say it here on the radio every single time. It's not just about the government, even us as the people, the followers. There's sometimes when the government is even trying to make or put in place some initiatives, but we as the people, somehow, due to our different belief systems, we get to frustrate this effort as well. You tell people, okay, this is the way to pass, but you see some people insisting on going or the other way. One-way traffic. We see these issues. We see people dumping refuse at different places, and you just get to wonder, how else should the leadership communicate this to the people? So even as a people, as the leaders, we need to be open-minded and be able to meet at some kind of middle ground to be able to make sure that we want and also achieve the Nigeria of our dream. Yes, Dr. Faith, you were going to make a comment.
Thank you. When I raised that, I think Dr. Murray had actually touched on the heart of the comment. When we say government, first thing is, whether we know it or not, we are government. We are part of that government. The government is a color of who we are. And I just want to put this out for every one of us and our listeners. I want us to go watch the documentary, The Men Who Built America. America was actually built. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever watched, and I've watched it over and over again. The men who built America were private sector men and women. And over time, what they done was help the government to be able to put things in place to actually make sure that all those things we put in place right. So I say this to people in the private sector: you are the heartbeat of the nation, but you must not sit on your oars. You must not sit in your private establishment. You must get involved in government as well, because at the end of the day, the government will decide what kind of environment that your private establishment will function in. For instance, the challenges we face in the private sector, you have power, you have road infrastructure, you have security. If those three things are dealt with, we get in government and make government take care of those three things. I can bet you 60% of our Nigerians in diaspora will be back home. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Faith Ikpekorede. And we go over to Dr. Yaradua as we take our final comment. Yes, Dr. Yaradua, as we get to wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much. This is an interesting conversation we are having. Actually, what I want to say is, we're just highlighting some of the challenges that we as Nigerians are facing. Actually, what we appreciate in other countries is nothing but a system. What we need to do is establish a system. A system must be in place before things can fall into place. If we don't have a system, and when I say a system, I mean a functional system where the government should be decisive in establishing a system where everything will fall into place. Whether it is infrastructure, whether it's education, whether it is employment, whatever it is. Once you have an established system, all things will fall into place. Now, for example, in education, we're having a lot of challenges in education. Once you have an established system, a workable system where law and order prevail, every citizen must abide by it. So some of the challenges we're having are because of the way in which the systemic problem that we've been having is largely due to this established system. So whether it's in education or in health sector or in agriculture, have a workable system, have an established system. And that system, we have brilliant Nigerians that are selfless, that can help in running these systems. And invite those Nigerians that are selfless, that are willing to help their humanity to come and help in nation building. Once you have a system established, believe me sincerely, all things will fall into place. You are thinking of this problem, that problem, the other problem. See, problems are organic. So if you want to have a solution to an organic problem, establish a system. And that system, if it's a workable system, being run by selfless individuals, selfless Nigerians, believe me sincerely, everything will fall into place. All the problems we are now lamenting about, whether it is in health sector, whether it's in education or in agriculture or in industrialization, everything will fall into place. So that is the point I'm trying to make, that unless we establish a system, then we'll keep on inventing every now and then in every sector. But once we have an established system, what makes Nigeria different from Britain or from the United States or from France? Is system. They have an established system. That is the only thing that is attractive to people when they go outside. The moment you have an established system in this country, all the people that have left this country, believe me sincerely, they will come back. Because they are only there because they have an established system. Everything is working. So if we have everything working in this country, believe me sincerely, those who japa will japa back into the country.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Really interesting conversation, looking at the different sides from different quarters. I think we've been able to make our point on this conversation. But I would just like to take a final word from Elizabeth George, wrapping up this conversation. Your words will be the final words as we've gotten solution and takeaway from other panelists.
Thank you so much. In fact, personally, I have learned a lot, and I really want to appreciate you for the choice of speakers. Everybody is seasoned and has a lot to contribute to this country. I really want to say that thank you, Nigerians. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for where we are, and thank you for where we would be, because I see that everybody is making one or two in stride. And for us at the humanitarian space, we will not stop supporting the government. If we say the government should do everything, it's not going to work. And that is why from the humanitarian space, you see us doing lots and lots of activities supporting the government. In fact, from the humanitarian spaces, you see even buildings for Charles Isto Foundation, we have even built a school in Bauchi State. So there are a lot of things that we keep doing. We support the health sector, we support education, we support in sensitization, we support in bringing in good and very impactful policies. So we will not stop doing what we are doing, because the government cannot do everything all. And I'm sure that next year, during the democracy conversation, is going to be a lot of positive impact. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much. And that's all we can take. Our time has been well invested in this conversation. Thank you very much to our speakers, this amazing lineup of speakers. Concluding on this conversation, Nigeria really has gained from the 25 years of democracy, looking at these different areas that we've had our experts speak on. However, there are deep-rooted issues that we must address: corruption, insecurity, inequality, to ensure that every Nigerian actually understands and is able to picture the reality of democracy that they want to see for sustained progress of the nation. Special thanks to our guests, Dr. Cynthia Gregg, Elizabeth George, Dr. Faith Ikpe-Korede, Dr. Suleiman Yaradua, Dr. Helen Amore. Thank you very much. Do have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much. There we have it. Special thanks to the producer, Rose Yusuf Kaisa. Thanks to Aisha Sani for the support. And big thanks to the executive producer, Tom Kiwale Shonaya. And thank you too on the other side for joining us as we get to strive for a better democratic system. My name is Esther Halaribe. Happy Democracy Day, Nigerians.
With one voice, we're a nation undivided and poised. We will take us down and build our land in faith to defend what is ours. One heart for one cause, we're determined to rebuild and restore. Where freedom rise and truth prevails, our land where there's hope for us all. Our land where there's hope for us all. We'll defend our land. We believe in this nation.
WFM 91.7